Ever struggled with getting the perfect length when cutting out your pants using a projector? What if I told you there was an easy way to adjust your pants digitally so you can skip the guesswork? Hi, I'm Christina and I love to digitally pattern draft creating unique pieces of wearable art. And today we will be digitally lengthening and shortening a pair of pants using Adobe Illustrator, ensuring you get the exact length you need before you cut out your pattern using your projector and cut into that amazing fabric. This tutorial is perfect for those of you who have sewn before and have used a projector before, but now are wanting to make some of those minor digital alterations to your patterns to get that perfect fit. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and bring up my Adobe Illustrator board. I recently imported this pattern that was a PDF sewing pattern that was printed out. This is what it looked like. And I have since imported it into Adobe Illustrator so that I could make some changes. This is the size I want to work with. Now, some things that I always like to double check before I actually project out my pattern is I like to double check my waist measurements and definitely my length measurements. This way I know that when I'm going to be working with everything, it's going to, or after I cut everything out, it's going to fit beautifully. So we're going to be working mostly with the lengths today. So the one thing I want to start with seeing is how much length is here. And because there's actually this little pop out, I bet they already have some length built into this pattern. So I could try and cut that apart, but there is a lot of extra notches right there. So, well, we'll still do it. So let's just see what it is. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that there. And I'm assuming that's going to be the fold up. I did not transfer all of these markings. And then we're going to see what the length is. So that's hitting at 29.9. So that's basically a 30-inch inseam is what that is going for. And we can check this other guy. Click right at that anchor point and that one. And that's 30.1. So they're not perfectly perfect, but they're within about a quarter of an inch, less than a quarter of an inch. They're within an eighth of an inch. And sometimes working with digital patterns, especially if you weren't the one to originally pattern it and everything, there might be a little bit of inaccuracies. But that is one that you can easily work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to rejoin those. Control Shift Alt J as a corner. We're going to do the same to this guy. Alt J, corner. And then we want this one. We want that one to be smooth, and this one. That way it is rejoined. So if we want to shorten this to a pair of shorts, I always like to double check what the inseam I want is versus what the outseam I want is. So if I want to shorten this to a pair of shorts, and let's just go with a 5-inch maybe, I would then draft a line starting at this corner. We're going to go 5 inches, and I want the angle kind of that way so that you can kind of see there's the 5 inches. I can then, zoom out just a little bit, recenter this so that it's there, and we can go like that. And then we can double check to see if this outseam is what I'd want it to be. So that outseam is measuring 16.5. Since I actually don't have a particular thing that I'm looking at, I'm not 100% sure if that's the correct length I am looking for. But that is when you would measure from the waist of your pants. So wherever that's hitting, whether that's hitting at your natural waist, at your high hip, at your low hip, the fashion waistline always kind of changes. It's that natural waist that never changes because of how big of a girth we have here. I believe these will be at a natural waist sitting pair of pants. So for this one, I would measure. Do I have my measuring tape right here? I do not have it right here. Oh, yes, I do. There it is. Right in front of my face. I would want to measure from my waist down to the hem of my jeans. And you want to stand up as straight as you can. And that's measuring on me 17. So that's pretty close. So I would probably drop this just a little bit. Another reason why I think I would drop that just a little bit is I would just want to, I don't know, visually, I personally would drop that a little bit, even with that, before measuring myself. I would want to make that hit, oops, I just want to just move the anchor point. I would probably drop it to somewhere about there, just to give it a little bit more length. Whoops, I want to go in. Then we need to do the same on the other side. So I can just move my 5-inch, get it right up there. We can then rotate it to there. Then we would draw a line. Let's get it right on that path. And then this is where you want to be very particular of your lengths to true it up. You would want to make sure this line here, we're going to lengthen it, is equal to this line here, which it is very much not. You see how much longer that is there? So right now, my pattern would not be true. So I lowered this one quite a bit because of that. So we can see how much is that. That's about, that's 1 3/4 inches, so it's almost 2 inches. So one thing I can do, because I have not made this pattern before at all, I would want to double check these notches and everything, make sure this is actually the waistline. Let's see here, if I pull this guy down, because that matches up with the pocket, which is interesting, because I would think that would want to go up there to match that. Gives us a little bit more wiggle room. But then what I would do is I would even out. So I bring this one down maybe 3/4 inch and then bring this one up 3/4 inch. It's all about the kind of the ebbs and flows of working with it. What I also always recommend, especially if you're working with a new pattern or a pattern you just drafted and you want it to be perfect and everything, I always suggest making a mock-up. Making a mock-up is going to help you fine-tune these tiny little alterations that we're doing so that you can make sure that it is the length you want. It is going directly around your leg, or it is doing a circular, slightly upward projection. So there's lots of different things that you can do with pants, but you do want to make sure that you double check and make sure that the girth looks good, that you don't have too much fabric, or that you don't need to add a little bit more fabric anywhere, and that your lengths and hems are looking good. So once I have everything all happy, I would definitely want to cut this pattern apart here, keep the top, and then I would want to make sure everything is true. So when everything I cut apart and everything, I would still want to double check and triple check that everything is true. If the more times you double check to make sure notches are good, that your seams will line up, the less problems you're going to have when you're actually sewing. That is one thing I always find people sometimes jump over because it's like, oh, that's a lot of extra work. And it is a lot of extra work. But by doing those little bits of extra steps to making sure those patterns are true, making sure your angles are all at 90 degrees so it has a nice through section to your next pair, or to on every seam, will make your garments just that much better. So that is shortening That's just a quick way to shorten those pants. I did not fully go into that, but there we are. So now we are going, what if we want to lengthen the pants? What if we only want to lengthen them maybe like 2 inches? They're at about 30 inches right now, and we want to go to 32. One thing you have to remember is right now, this already has a hem built in. So it's already having a slight flare in and a slight flare out. Like if I really zoom into this, you can kind of see how it's mirroring that flare. So if I just continue to add onto it here, it's actually going to do something kind of funky. So what I would do is either you want to add onto it right here so that it continues down. But commonly on pants patterns or skirt patterns or capelets and coats and everything, there's sometimes a lengthen line, and it's sometimes up a little bit higher. If you don't have that lengthen line, you can always add one in. And that just makes it so that everything that's already fixed for you and finalized for you at the hem, you won't actually have to mess with. You can then just add the amount you want in up here, and you're not messing with it down there. If you are just adding an inch or two, it is possible just to add it at the bottom, but just know then you have to recalculate stuff for yourself. So if you're tracing patterns over with all the different markings, you would have to do that yourself. So what we're going to do is we are just going to add 2 inches right here. We'll go right at the knee. So I'm going to go right across, and then we're going to zoom in just a little bit. Grab that outside line. We're going to cut at the intersect. I'm going to grab this bottom guy. We're going to transform. We're going to move him, and we're going to move him horizontally 0, and vertically we want to go down. So we're going to go +2. You can see it pops it down there, and we'll hit OK. And that now added that 2 inches. So I'm going to then grab my pen and reconnect these guys. But then I'm gonna let that smooth out just a little bit more. Yeah. So then we're gonna, actually for this one, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this anchor point and move him up, which will also lengthen him. So this was hitting at 32. You can see this is actually kind of bulging out a little bit, which is not my favorite. So I'm going to pull that back in to like that. And that's looking much more like the curve I want. Then we can either cut this apart to make sure that it's the 2 inches that we added, or we'll do the same on the other side. So we're just going to go in, going to draw a line across to give us a guide point, zoom in on it, then we're going to highlight the pattern we want to cut, get out our cut tool, cut right on that line, highlight the pants pattern I want to move, transform, move. We don't want to go horizontally, and we want to go +2, not -2. And we're going to hit OK. And then we're just going to reconnect. So I'm just going to grab this, and it's smoothing it back out because that works better. You can pen it, you can retrace it. There's a couple different things you can do. Whoops, didn't want to do that. But then we can delete this. And then if you have that, you can actually go back and join Control-Shift-Alt-J. I must have more than 2 points on that line. Yeah, there must be 3 points right there, really close. Yeah, so there was another point behind. There we go. So then they are joined back up there. and you can double check to make sure that that is the correct length. You can either cut it apart, or I will sometimes just do a quick straight line. It won't be, whoops, let's get right on that point there. It won't be 100% perfect because I didn't get fully down on that thing. It won't be 100% perfect because you are not following that curve, and it does follow the curve. But because there are so many points within this line here, because of how it was originally drafted, if I did a copy front with a copy front, see, it's only copying that little tiny bit of one, so that's not going to tell me much. We can probably see if we can get that copy front. So we did get it that time, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that second. And of course I shouldn't have done that. There we go. So I'm able to then measure again 31.9, and we'll do the same thing over here. So we're going to try to do a copy front, and that went to 37. That's 31. So something is wrong. And I don't know. Oh no, okay, there we go. I had something else highlighted because that's 32.1 and this is 31.9, which matches with what we had earlier. This one was a little bit shorter, this one was a little bit longer. So again, that's how the easiest way to add length. You can just add it straight at the bottom, but when you do that, remember everything that's already kind of down there, that's already pre-planned for you, is then out the window. So that's why they have those lengthen lines, to make it easier for you to lengthen and shorten this way. So if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe so you can see other ways to digitally alter your patterns in Adobe Illustrator before you project them out so that they are perfect the first time. I look forward to seeing you in some of my other videos. Happy patterning!